Hello, how are you today? And are you ready to hear mysteries? If you're ready, I'll tell you. Deep in the mountains of upstate New York, there's a whole town populated by a single inbred family. In late 2011, I fell down a rabbit hole and almost didn't make it back out. See, I've always had this unquenchable fascination with the unsolved and the unknown. Yes, I'm mystified by old legends and lore, but they never really held my attention for long. At least not in the same way that something else did. Something more sinister and believable and closer to home. Missing persons cases. At the time, I lived in the heart of Manhattan and worked as an archivist in one of the world's most famous libraries. I'd spend my days appraising and preserving priceless old books and manuscripts, and my nights poring over internet threads about the latest discovery or clue or crime. I remember that day I first stumbled to the edge of the rabbit hole vividly. It was early October, gloomy, cold, and getting colder every day. I went up to the third floor of my building, introduced myself to Mikhail, the newest librarian for the Archives and Manuscript Division, then made my way to the back of the room where my office was. 4 hours, work went as planned. It wasn't until around 4 o'clock that something odd happened. I'd opened the door to my office to find a particular manuscript and heard a grunt. It sounded like someone lifting something heavy, followed by the unmistakable sound of a sliding shelf being pulled out. No appointments were scheduled in my division for that day. Mikhail, I called out. There was no response, but I clearly heard a tinny sound that could have been a ringtone. Sounded slightly familiar, like an old game theme. There was a quick intake of breath, like someone being startled, then sharp footsteps hurrying towards the only exit. Intrigued and a little suspicious, I left my office and walked through the stacks when something caught my eye. Someone had indeed pulled out a retractable shelf and placed a book on it. There was nothing particularly interesting about the book itself, heavy, dull brown, and slightly bloated from age. But the title, written in peeling gold Franklin Gothic font, made me pause. I walked over and picked it up, immediately noticing something stuck between its pages. I carefully flipped the book open and saw a matte black business card. On it, a quote was written in all capital letters in bright white ink. "Man is the cruelest animal." I flipped the card over to see for more words. Adirondack Park, the Hollow. I knew the quote was from Nietzsche and that Adirondack Park was a forest preserve up north. But the Hollow was beyond me, and I especially didn't understand why someone would write any of those things together on a blank black business card, then stick it into an old book about human experimentation. A sound like someone plopping themselves into a chair startled me back to the present. I set the book back onto the retractable shelf and walked towards it, thinking I'd be able to tell off whoever had shoved the card so unceremoniously into one of my books, only to find Mikhail sitting at the front desk. "What's up?" he asked, noticing my confused expression. "Did you let anyone in here recently?" He took a sip of coffee and nodded. MMHMN. He swallowed, then said in a hushed voice, "Yeah, cute tall guy in a suit." He came in, like he checked the time on his computer 10 minutes ago. "Why, did you see him?" He smirked. I held up the business card. This was in one of the books. The ink was fresh. It could have caused some real damage. "Oh," he said, then looked around. "He's still here?" "No," I said. "I checked. There's no one in here except us." He must have left while I was getting this. He lifted his paper cup a fraction of an inch. Too bad. He was really cute. Hey, is his number on that card? Maybe I could give him a ring and, reprimand him? He winked. I shook my head. "No number, sorry." Did he say why he needed to view this collection? Did he schedule an appointment while I was working? Mikhail frowned. No and no. But he did have a card of admission. From whom? Mikhail shuffled some papers on his desk, then handed me a small piece of cardstock. One glance told me all I needed to know. The official insignia of the Federal Bureau of Investigation was stamped on one corner and an unreadable signature was signed near the bottom. That's it. What? There's no reason on here, Mikhail, and no name. Did you check his ID? Oh, no, I didn't. Ups, he said, then smiled wickedly. I might have been distracted because, you know, he was cute. Yeah, I gathered. I sighed. You're not supposed to leave the table while you're scheduled up here, Mikhail. He threw me a semi-scathing, semi-worried look. Well, you were working in the back, so I figured it'd be fine. I was only gone for, like, 3 minutes. I needed a caffeine boost. Well, just let me know next time, okay? I don't mind watching the front desk. I just don't want anything to happen to these books. Mikhail's face softened. I understand. I'm sorry. Hey, can I get you a tea or something? As an apology, nah. I smiled. But what about lunch sometime next week? Tai oh yum, I'm in. Hey, you staying until close? Actually, I said, I think I might call it a day. Oh, he said, his face falling. What? I dunno. It feels a little spooky in here, especially when you're the only one inside, you know? Yeah, I said, turning to walk back to my office for my things. I know. That night, I lay awake in bed for hours, unable to shut off my mind. Finally, around midnight, I got up and pulled a heavy, swollen brown book out of my work bag. I'm not proud. Taking materials out of the special collections wasn't very professional of me, but I was curious. I carefully flipped the book open to the page the card had marked. Chemical Experiments, Non-Consensual Tests, Operation Top Hat. I started reading and felt my pulse quicken. In 1953, the United States Army officially adopted strict guidelines concerning the use of human subjects in biological, radiological, and chemical research and testing. These guidelines, which strongly echoed the Nuremberg Code, required that all projects involving humans be approved by the Secretary of the Army. Despite careful constraints, however, there remained a loophole. The guidelines did not actually define in detail what types of testing required approval, thus creating a gray area of selective compliance. I skimmed farther down. Though several experiments were submitted to the Secretary of the Army in 1953 and were later approved, one test in particular skirted this process. Operation Top Hat was deemed a field exercise by the U.S. Army and was conducted in September of that same year at the Fort McClellan Army Chemical School in Alabama. During this exercise, soldiers in the chemical corps were subjected to various chemical and biological weapons, including nerve agents and mustard gas, in an attempt to study contamination and decontamination. The personnel involved in these experiments were not volunteers nor informed that any test was taking place. I took a deep breath, then flicked carefully to the table of contents and read, 1. Pharmacological research. 2. Human radiation experiments. 3. Disease, pathogens, and biological warfare testing. 4. Chemical experiments. Point 5. Psychological and torture experiments. 6. Surgical experiments. Point 7. Other experimentation, testing, and research. 8. Academic and professional commentary. 9. Legal implications. Point 10. Policies enacted. A few of the chapters had subchapters containing things I'd heard about, like the Montauk Project, but mostly they covered things that I couldn't even begin to imagine actually occurring. Sick, twisted, rotten, unspeakable things that no one should ever have to experience, not even those our government has locked away to be forgotten about. I went into work late the next day. I'd spent the night reading that book, horrified by what our government has done to its own citizens and soldiers. To say I was exhausted would be an understatement. Mikhail was manning the front desk again. Hey, he said vibrantly, then, noticing my face, continued, You feeling all right? What? Oh, yeah, just couldn't sleep last night. Ah, I'm sorry. But Mikhail continued, I have some news. I've wanted to tell you this all day. That guy came back earlier. Like 3 hours ago. Guy? Yeah, you know, the cute one. He was looking for this book about human ethics or something. He said he was reading it yesterday and got an urgent work call he couldn't ignore, so he marked his place thinking he'd be back later. He says he's so very sorry for doing that and he wasn't thinking straight. His apology was all kinds of adorable. But hey, that solves the mystery of the card. Though there is another mystery. What? I couldn't find that book he was looking for. Maybe I wasn't looking in the right area. Oh, no, it was back in my office. I lied. I was checking it for damage. Michael said. I didn't know if I was allowed to go back there or not. I appreciate that you didn't. I've got some delicate projects going on. I paused for a beat. Did you happen to get this? A cute guy's name. Shit, Mikhail said, then made a face and put a hand to his lips. Eps, sorry. No, I didn't. I'm an idiot. But he smiled. I did get his number, you know. In the event the book turned up somewhere, Mikhail waved a piece of ripped paper around. All right, I said. I rubbed my forehead, feeling the beginnings of a migraine coming on. I'll give him a call, tell him the book is here and that he can have a look when I'm finished with it. Oh, Mikhail said, looking crestfallen. Sorry, I said and took the slip of paper with a number written on it. Just protocol when a book is being fixed. Truth was, I didn't really want any unprofessional calls happening in the name of my division. Back in my office, I quickly consulted my computer, then picked up my phone and called a number. Hello, you've reached the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Public Information Office. This call may be monitored or recorded. To speak to a representative, please press 1. To request a Freedom of Information Act, please press. I pressed a button, the line beeped, then a voice spoke. Hello, this is Victoria. How may I help you today, Victoria? Hello, I said. I was wondering if I could request some information. Certainly. What kind of information are you looking for? Sometime yesterday, one of your special agents used our facilities and didn't quite follow our protocols. I paused. Actually, between you and me, I'm not exactly certain if the man was really an FBI agent or just impersonating one. Victoria was silent for a moment, then said, "Oh no. We definitely wouldn't want that. I'll see what I can do. May I have your name, your zip code, and the facility you work at?" I told her. There was the sound of a keyboard on the other end. Ms. Haneda. Yes, records show that there was indeed an agent at the location you mentioned. Oh, I said, well, would it be possible to get a name? Or a reason as to why he was here in the first place? I'm sorry, no, Victoria said. That information is classified and, unfortunately, requests for name checks must be submitted through proper channels. Proper channels, other federal agencies. Oh, I said again, I see. What I can do, though, is submit this report to your local field office and have the special agent in charge speak directly with this particular agent about following proper protocols when using your facility. No, I said, that's all right. He didn't cause too much trouble. Are you certain? Yes, thank you for all your help. Of course, have a nice day. After Victoria's line disconnected, I picked up the bit of paper Mikhail had so reluctantly given me, sighed, then dialed. It rang once, then went straight to a generic voicemail. I left a brief message and hung up. I rubbed my forehead again, then glanced over at my work and sighed. I couldn't concentrate. I was on edge, jumpy. I pulled my laptop towards me, opened up Google, and typed into words, Adirondack Park. Of course, that search turned up nothing nefarious, so I opened a new tab, went to the forum I frequented, and typed in the same 2 words. Instantly, several threads popped up. I clicked on the one with the most views and went on from there until I found something promising. The thread in question was about cold cases across the country. I spent maybe 30 minutes scrolling through all the posts when I saw New York mentioned. I stopped and felt my blood run cold at what the poster wrote. A hiker, a young woman, had gone missing a few months prior. According to her mother, she'd left early one Saturday morning in late July with the intention of exploring the Adirondack Park. She was only supposed to be gone for a few hours, 6 tops, but she never came home that night. Her mother didn't immediately call the police, saying that she thought her daughter had just gone to a friend's house. 2 days after her initial disappearance, the mother reported her missing. The cops canvassed the area and did a public news appearance. Afterwards, an elderly woman came forward and said she'd seen the young woman running alongside the road that Saturday evening while she was driving home. The hiker, the motorist said, was covered in blood and some kind of other substance. She said it was black and shiny, like all. When pressed, the elderly woman said she didn't stop or call the police because she didn't think it was her business. There were no other leads or clues. The cops and state investigators searched the area to no avail. The woman was never seen or heard from again, and the case went cold. There were several children comments to this post. Most were just conjecture, well wishes, and exclamations of despair, but 3 in particular piqued my interest. One comment listed and linked a few other missing persons reports from that area, including to cops who'd gone to check it out some years prior to the young woman's vanishing and vanished themselves. The second comment mentioned that Adirondack Park was close to another, stranger place. They linked a New York Times article about a peculiar Adirondack hamlet seemingly lost in time. It described a place, referred to as the Hollow, that was supposedly inhabited by 2 large families. Despite the article implying that the Hollow wasn't as bad as urban legends made it out to be. The commenter insisted that one family who lived there had absorbed the other family, whatever that meant, then resorted to incest to keep their town alive. They also offered up some conjecture that the people in this family were witches or devil worshippers who ate human flesh and practiced black magic. But it was the third comment that really got my cogs turning. The commenter said they had once been part of the U.S. Army but had been dishonorably discharged for going AWOL. After a long tirade about how messed up the Army can be, they relayed an interesting story. They said that back during their time, the government was conducting all sorts of strange tests, not just on its soldiers, but its citizens as well. They said that the government was particularly interested in unique humans such as twins, those who suffered from birth defects, or who might be inbred to conduct various psychological, pharmacological, and chemical experiments on, and that they wouldn't be surprised if these sorts of experiments were still happening today. Finally, they mentioned how the all-like substance seen on the young woman seemed similar to a chemical or biological weapon the government was testing on him and his unit years ago. I closed my laptop and looked around, my eyes falling on the torn bit of paper with the numbers strewn across it. Without thinking, I grabbed it and dialed, getting the voicemail yet again. I took a deep breath, then said, "Hello, sorry to bother you again. This is Marianne Haneda from the Manuscript and Archives Division. I hope I don't sound too presumptuous, but it's about that card you accidentally left in the book you were looking at the other day. I was wondering what you meant by it. Now, I know with your line of work you probably can't tell me much, if anything at all, but I'm very interested in true crime and the quest for justice and all that, and was wondering if you'd be interested in letting me interview you sometime." Is that even allowed? I paused for a second. That's all. "Have a nice evening." I hung up and immediately pinched my nose in embarrassment. What possessed me to do that? I'll never know. That night, yet again, I couldn't sleep. I had strange, fevered dreams of women covered in blood and soldiers wearing gas masks melting down to black goo. I woke up an hour before dawn with my mind made up. It was my only day off and curiosity had gotten the better of me. I stupidly decided to take a trip up north to see what I could find. I regret that. I always will. It took nearly 4 hours to get up to the area I wanted to investigate. Rather than start with Adirondack Park, I pulled over about 2 miles from the Hollow. I figured that since it was daytime, nothing bad would happen. I got out of my Subaru and started walking. After almost 2 hours of walking, I saw and heard nothing. I was just about to give up when in the distance I saw what looked like a person standing against a tree. I hesitated, then walked towards it, wary. But upon closer inspection, I realized it was just one of those plastic ponchos strung up across a branch. It seemed to be pointing to something. I walked in that direction and covered my mouth in horror. My guess is that it was some sort of sick shrine. A deer's head, not yet fully rotted, was nailed halfway up the trunk of a tree. Beneath it lay a scattering of stacked antlers, some still covered with putrid velvet, and other things, decaying things that once had been alive. I covered my nose and mouth with my sweater and leaned closer. Something was moving inside a pile of leaves that had accumulated around the antlers and carrion. Against my better judgment, I knelt, picked up a stick, and began poking at it. Suddenly, something small and black and bloody popped out, making this ungodly screeching noise. Shit, I yelped and fell backwards into the mushy fallen leaven and mud. It was a cat, half dead and hissing. Someone had roughly cut off its ears and its tail. "Oh my God," I said, my heart throbbing, and not just from fear. "You poor thing, what have they done to you?" "We've got to get you to a doctor." I pulled out my phone and immediately saw that it had no service. "Damn," I muttered, then pulled off my sweater with the thought that I might be able to wrap the cat up and bring it back to an animal hospital. The cat yelled at me in pain or panic. It seemed to be protecting something very recognizable. "What's it you've got there?" I squatted down, then recoiled in shock. It was a severed human hand. The skin was decomposed, rank, and it looked like the cat had been gnawing on it. But that's not all. It was clutched tight in rigor mortis around a string of silver and rust. I regret to say that morbid curiosity got the better of me. Despite knowing that I was alone, I glanced around, then reached forward to untangle it and blinked in surprise. They were military dog tags. Suddenly, a strange pop sounded out from behind me. I stood up and whipped around. The cat shrieked and wavered. Another pop and the cat's eye exploded. I screamed and dropped my sweater. At least 5 more pops echoed around me before I realized what was happening. Someone, somewhere, was shooting a pellet gun at it. The cat keeled over sideways and lay very still. Laughter erupted from the trees around me. It was at that exact moment I realized just how incomprehensibly stupid I'd been. Traveling all the way out there, alone, without telling anyone where I was going or for how long, under some mistaken belief I could solve a crime that had gone cold long before I'd even heard about it. "Who's there?" I asked forcefully, trying to mask my fear. "Shh, shh," a deep voice said, not even attempting to be quiet. "She see us. Who's there?" A single whistle sounded to the left of me. I spun in the direction of it, my eyes wide and heart pounding. I didn't see anything through the trees. Another whistle sounded to my right and I started to cry. "We're gonna get ya," the same voice said. "You better run, run, run." "Whoever's there, stop. I'm calling the police." "My husband knows I'm out here," I lied. "You don't want to know what'll happen if we catch you," the deep voice said. "Nothing bad," another shaky male voice said. "We'll just cover you in sauce and eat you up." There was more laughter and another pop. I felt as something sting my thigh and screamed again. Pure adrenaline fueled me forward, toward the direction of the road, allowing me to ignore the stabbing pain in my thigh. I ran and ran and ran. From behind me came the sounds of crashing and grunts. It sounded like whoever was chasing me was close and getting closer. I stumbled onto the road, prepared for the worst, expecting the worst, but the noises had stopped abruptly. I fumbled with my keys, panicked and locked my door, jumped inside, then locked them again. Despite my distress, I noticed a black Ford with government plates was parked next to my Subaru. There was no one inside and I didn't wait around to see who it belonged to. I reported what happened as soon as I got back to the city. The detectives who took my statement were grave and serious and professional. I gave them the dog tags hoping they'd be of help. I received a call from them not long after I left the station. Ms. Haneda, yes? We just wanted you to know that we'll be sharing what you've told us with our liaison, your liaison. Special agent with the FBI. He's been investigating some nefarious happenings in our state. Unfortunately, he's been out in the fields since yesterday and we don't know when he'll be back. Otherwise, we'd have you speak directly to him. Oh, I said, blinking in surprise and wondering if it was the same guy Mikhail had spoken with, then realized that there was almost certainly more than one FBI agent in the state of New York. Yes, of course. That's no problem at all. I just hope you catch these criminals. Were the dog tags any help? That's just the thing, the detective said slowly. What is? The detective exhaled. Look, this isn't well, I'm not supposed to say anything, but seeing what you've been through and the fact we haven't turned up much so far, I guess I can tell you. Tell me what? Those dog tags weren't registered. They didn't belong to anyone, must have been a replica or something. And the detective continued, unfortunately, the hand we found was to decompose to ID. Oh, I said, don't worry, we'll be in touch if we need anything else or find any other leads. A week or so after I was attacked and chased, the detectives brought me in and had me listen to a lineup of men repeat the same line over and over again. But none of them sounded like the two I'd heard that day in the woods, and I didn't want to erroneously press any charges. I asked about their liaison, but they just shook their heads and apologized, saying he was up to his neck with work and had stepped out of the department for a breather. After only a couple months, my case went cold. The police didn't discover any other leads, and there just wasn't enough evidence otherwise. The man Mikhail interacted with never called me back. There was one thing, though, one little strange thing. About a month after I'd idiotically gone up to northern New York, a library specialist in my building came up to my office carrying something I recognized. My sweater. It smelled like it had been recently washed. Where did you get this? I asked her after she'd given it to me. Some guy. He said it was yours and he was just returning it. She shrugged like she wasn't paid enough to care. When? Like an hour ago. I didn't bring it up right away because I went on lunch after. She explained, her tone clear that her lunch break mattered more than my sweater. She turned to walk away. Wait, I said. She turned back to me, her eyebrows raised. Tall guy wearing a suit, tall, yeah, but he was wearing jeans and some metal band t-shirt. Think it was Slayer or Metallica or something. Why? I swallowed, hating myself for what I was about to say. Cute. What? I closed my eyes and repeated myself. Was he cute? Oh, I guess so. Objectively attractive? Yeah, if you're into that sort of thing. I thanked her and waited until the door to my office shut fully behind her before unfolding the sweater. There, tucked neatly inside, was a single matte black business card. On it, a quote and one word in white ink and all capital letters were written. That which does not kill you makes you stronger. I flipped the card over. Sorry. Now, I know a lot of you might suggest I call the number again or go back up to that godforsaken forest. But honestly, and excuse my language please, fuck that. I don't think I'll ever go up into those woods or any woods ever again. And I will never, ever personally look into another cold case for as long as I live. No matter how deeply I've fallen into the rabbit hole, life is too short to gamble. I've since retired from archival sciences and spend my days strolling around the city, keeping to myself. It's nice, it's peaceful, but most of all, it's safe. And to those of you thinking you've figured out where this place is and that it'd be fun to go up there and investigate yourselves, this is the end of the story. Thank you for listening and please subscribe to support News Storytelling. Thank you.